What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Car Smart TV. And so, you're going to recognize this golf cart. Customer decided that they was just going to go ahead and upgrade the golf cart since it's a lot more efficient that way for them, for most everybody really. But we are going to do a conversion to this golf cart, get out the old electronics and put in the new Navitas technology. And so let's check out the cart. 98 EZGO TXT has the 5-pin series controller, motor, and forward and reverse switch. All of that's disappearing. All of it. And so what I mean by disappearing, forward and reverse switch here will no longer be in the golf cart. We're going to have that push button back and forth rocker switch, Navitas controller, and then the matching motor for the new system. So stay tuned, guys. We're gonna get this thing going. Alright, guys, so the first thing you're gonna want to do is get your hot and your negative off the battery pack, and then you can start pulling all the covers off of everything. And start pulling the handle off and getting the rod and switch removed from the golf cart. Alright, everybody, so got our stuff out and unboxed. Got our cable set, wiring harness, rocker pod, switch, solenoid, controller, and lastly, motor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start obviously with the hardest part. That's getting that motor back in to the rear end here. And once I get that in, I'm going to probably start working on getting like my rocker pod attached to the body of the cart. I'm going to get my harness laid in after that, and then I'll get my controller bolted up, tow run switch mounted, all that good stuff. Get our wires for our harness pretty much zipped up at that point, and then we will put our cables in at the very end, so that way we can keep them nice and neat when we bring them to the motor, when you bring them to the controller, and when they come over to the battery and solenoid area. So hang in there with us and we're gonna get started. Alright, guys, got it slid up on the rear end there. A little bit of doing. It's quite heavy. You can probably hear me out of breath. Anyhow, at this point now you just get your bolts that were in the old motor. You'll rotate this motor until you get to where the holes are on the barrel of the engine of the motor, and then you just start putting your screws back in, and that way it'll hold it in position. And then like you can always come back and put the rings back on the new larger cable set after it's all said and done, and hook it back to the position that's down here, because that bolt will hold that ring to the side that's closer to your battery pack. That way it keeps the cables a little bit tighter as you come around in here. So I'll probably get that done later, but at this point I just want the motor to be sitting where it's supposed to be. So we're gonna get this bolted up, guys. Alright, guys, so generally you can use one of the original holes that the old controller sat in, and then you'll just get a self-tapper and come in here and self-tap into any of the holes that you want here to hold the controller back to the plate. And then of course you'll put one in the bottom, and then that's all you'll need to hold the controller still. So let's get that finished up. Alright, there we go. Now if you really wanted to, you could come in here, take this bolt back out, and put you another self-tapper here, and that way it kind of blends together. In this case, I like the way these heads are big on these bolts like this. Gives it a little more bite, keeps it good and snug to the golf cart. So we're going to leave it that way. Just snug it up. Alright guys, so to make the job a little bit easier for you, these are what's called the tow run mounting kit. And fortunately we have some here. And what that's going to do actually is, me personally, I like to have my tow run switch above everything, not below it. But those are made to be below. In most cases though, you can utilize these and put the solenoid down here below. It looks like this case I'm going to have to go with mounting it something like that. I think I'm going to mount it like this, and the reason why is because I like the way the cables will be tucked up underneath the body here. It'll have a little extra protection in that area. And then you have your bracket for your tow run switch to actually go right here in this position, so that way your tow run is just off to the side, just like they are in the case of like a EZGO PDS model, where your tow run switch is out here on your cover box. This is essentially what that's going to do, is put this tow run switch right there like that, so it's easily accessed and easy for you to cut the cart on and off when you're towing it. So we're gonna get on that, fellas. We're gonna get our bracket for the tow run mounted up. Alright, so you can see our tow run bracket is now mounted. Our solenoid is now mounted. Controller. And so we are going to get to putting the rocker pod onto our hole here. Get our wires run from our wiring harness. And then finally we'll be changing out the battery cables and running the cables to the motor, from the battery to the solenoid, to controller. And we will be to see all these wires. Looks a little overwhelming, but that's okay, because every one of them is tagged with where they go. So it's not hard at all to follow the tags and do what's necessary for putting the wires where they go. In this section where your seat hinges are, it'll run right over to where you see these two holes that were holding the old F&R bracket for the lever style. And so you'll just zip tie down through here as much as you can to keep your forward and reverse rocker pod wiring harness there tied up nice and neat. But we're just going to hang that over for now, because what we're going to do now is I'm going to take a pause, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the harness that's going to go from the compartment where the old F&R was. We got to get the key switch wires run underneath the golf cart, up the dash, or up into the dash, and then over behind where our key switch area is. So stay tuned with me, guys. I'm going to take and run this up through here and get our key switch panel off and out of the way, and pull my wires through, and you'll see what I'll do next. And guys, don't get too discouraged or worried about what's what at the moment, or like how it's laying in here, because you'll always be able to come back and take care of putting the wires wherever they need to go once you get it laid in. And once you get it laid in, it's a whole lot easier to deal with. Okay, so this one is probably the toughest one, and it's not even that tough. It's just all about getting it to go in where you want it. But here are your key switch wires. They'll go right to the key switch. You may or may not have to cut these off and put the female spade connectors on these, but that's okay. You just cut them off, strip them back, because you can see they're doubled up, right? Cut it off, strip them back. You twist those two wires together, and then you put your spade on there, crimp it down, put you some heat shrink back over it so you can plug into the key switch, because a lot of times you'll get key switches that have the screws that hold them to the case, but in the EZGO world that's not typical. So it takes you just a few extra minutes to take care of that problem, but it still should not hinder anything that you do here. And so we're going to get this run underneath the cart. Just go right down through the floor pan here, guide it down through nice and easy so it don't get all hung up on you. Pull it as far as you'd like to go. It doesn't matter at first, because like you said, you can always pull back anything you need. You can see right by that blue wire, the red that runs along it. Well, that's a little cutout in the body, or in the chassis itself, for the main wiring harness of the cart to run through. So we just run that right back through, right under the cart, all the way down. And then you can see it come out right here by the firewall. It's coming out right here. I'll jerk this front wheel off. I will drill some small holes in this rail right here and zip tie my wiring harness, because you got plenty of slack you can pull back. Zip it up, make it nice and neat. Of course, I'm going to zip it probably all the way up here, have it run across real nice, tidy like, and that'll do it for that. Alright guys, so like I said, we was getting them wires run through the dash. We got them up here, and all your excess wire, because it's going to be long, they make it to be long like that so you can basically get it to fit any length distance you need to get up front. You're just going to leave that excess back there behind the dash. As I said, sometimes you may have to cut these ring terminals off and put some female spade terminals back on it, because your key switch has male spades coming out of it. So you want to match that up so it's not a big fight. It'll take you less time to cut this off, strip them back, put a female spade terminal on it than it will to get you a key switch that has the screws that hold it to the back side of it. I'm not worried about that at this moment. And so we're going to get that buttoned up, and just stick with us, guys. Alright guys, this is what I mean by the female spade terminals. If you're not familiar with what they're called, they're able to just slide up on the peg of any terminal you need in that area. Work good for the forward and reverse. Anything that has spades like this, you can replace them with these. So what we're going to do, we're going to get this off, get it put back together properly. Second wire done. Now all you gotta do is unplug the old wires from the old harness, and then if you want to put, or if you already have a battery meter like this cart does, but it's already pre-wired here for us, so we just put the two wires back and go on when we're done. But if you were actually just installing one and you just needed the two wires to make it light up, just strip these back, put the necessary ends for your meter, whatever comes out of the back of your meter, crimp them on there, plug them in, you're good to go. And it's just as simple as plugging up, pushing back behind the dash, and then put your key switch plate back on, and you're ready to go. And no, it does not matter which side of the key switch you plug those wires into, because it's going to operate the same either direction, on or off, and that's it. Okay, so let's now move into putting the rocker pod and the switch where it belongs here on the front of the cart, or on the front of the firewall where the old F&R handle was. And we're going to get our wiring harness unplugged, and I'll get it zipped up and show you how I'd like to do that right there, because I like to make sure that this wire is all the way out of the way, and then it helps me lay out everything back in a nice place and get it zipped up and look really cool. So this is for your speed sensor on your motor, and so you know it's going to go, you're going to send it through behind the battery tray. Just carry it on over, and you might as well go on and plug it up. That way it's nothing you have to worry about later. Okay. Alright, I've got the forward and reverse rocker pod here. And so we've got our F&R mounted. Super simple. Couple self-tapping screws. You got one there on that side, one there on that side. You pop your switch out. That way you can move this and get it as close to level as possible. And then we've got our wire run across our frame rail there. You can see my zip tie here. Wire comes up all the way across, zip tied there, and then I like to take this down that cross member and zip tie it to the cross member, and then we'll come back and clean this up, all the zip ties up later. And then we start just plugging up all our necessary stuff here. Like I've got my main harness plugged into the controller here, which alleviates me having to worry about that. And so then you get your ITS and your solenoid activation wires up in here. You'll get the plug from the cart, which would be here. And we will just plug those together. Move that out of our way. And then we'll have our coil wires that will go up to the solenoid. Or a negative. If you see a positive or a negative there on the solenoid, that's what you'll associate the wires with. Like obviously red will be your positive, and the green with the black stripe will be your negative. If it is not identified on the solenoid, it does not matter which lug you put them on. Which will lead us to our final wires from the harness itself, which will be the B-. And so we'll pull the B-, the last two wires actually, the B- wire and the ring terminal, and we'll just put a couple of threads on it. And then we have our main B+, which actually will go to the solenoid on the wire that comes from your main battery. If you have your main positive coming over to your solenoid, okay, this wire will join it on the solenoid in the same place. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to take my B+ wire and I'm going to run it right down beside, probably in behind, and come to the back side of the solenoid. And so that's where I'm going to put this wire. Alright guys, get these cables laid out and start getting everything hooked up. Alright, main positive, main negative. Got two different lengths in these cables, and I can get to the motor with this one a lot easier it'll make it a lot easier for the routing of the cable for me. And then I can take the shorter one that normally I use for getting back there, but in this case I like it better like this. So I'm going to take the shorter cable and make it my main positive. Alright guys, so when you're doing a conversion or an upgrade like this is an upgrade that we use parts from our conversion kits to do for our customers, so that it provides them with this forward and reverse push button and the regen system in the newer models, and then the tow run switch is added for the convenience of the towing. And so we get some comments and questions and calls all the time about a particular wire in the wiring harness. And so I will explain this, and I think I have a video out for it, but in this situation it's perfect timing for this. So in the golf cart wiring harness, you're going to see this little fella right here. Okay, so on the tag, let's see if I can get it to, anyhow, that says B+. Okay, so what that means is that it is looking for the main positive out of the battery pack. And instead, what you could do, and instead of bringing this wire and putting it here, we have generally put and told all of our customers that you're going to take the same cable that comes off your battery pack that should come into your solenoid, which is that cable there. You're going to put that with that cable. You're going to put the B positive cable out of the wiring harness onto that cable. Just like that. And you'll just put your lock washer on, put the nut on it, tighten the nut down. Don't overdo it though. Just enough where that ring does its job with locking those cables together. And so there you have both of those on the same peg of the 36 volt from the battery pack. That's what you're looking for. Now, before you get too crazy and finish tidying up everything, let's make sure the system powers up. So this is when you can determine which direction is tow and which direction is run here. Alright, so we've got LEDs flashing on the controller. They're flashing green. And so that means the system should be ready to operate. So we're going to get the key switch on here. We get a solid green out of the controller. And now let's put this thing in forward and see if we can get some solenoid activation here. Alright, so now that we got it in forward, the card actually just shuttered backwards a little bit, and that can happen. So the only thing you need to do in this situation, cut the key switch off. Okay, cut your tow run back to the tow position so it powers down the entire battery pack voltage to the controller. Then you're going to have these two here, your yellow and your white. You just need to swap those. That's all you got to do. And yes, if you want to go through the trouble on doing it on the motor, you can do that there too, but we're going to do it right here. Just unplug them. Plug the white where the yellow was. Plug the yellow where the white was. And we should be fine and ready to roll. So let's power the system back on. As you can see, the light flashes. Comes to green flashing. Cut the key switch on. Ready to go. Pedal down. And there we go. So now we know that the system is good and ready to go. And so now you can go back and you can cut all your wire ties, make sure everything's tight. Like in my case right here, I see a wire that I'm actually going to loosen this nut up for and move over to that side of the post. It'll be a lot less stress on it. And I'm pretty much squared away here, guys, other than a few little cleanups. Put our panels back and spray these batteries down for any acid protection, and take it for a spin. So stay tuned. Alright, so a final recap on what we've done here. And to start with, we got out all the old series controller and electric motor. We did away with all that series stuff. We went to regen, which is what most of your electric golf carts now have, is regen. Some of them are AC, some of them are still DC. A lot of carts are going lithium battery packs when they're new. You can still utilize either or in this setting. So, and that brings us to another point. These controllers from Navitas are 36 and 48 volt capable. So, meaning if you wanted to go 48 volt lithium, so long as you had a 48 volt lithium battery pack and a lithium charger, the controller is going to recognize the 48 volts right off the bat. Then you would adjust just minor settings in the app on your cell phone, and that's just going to be like the speed and the torque and everything, and you're all set. You now have a 48 volt golf cart. Same with the acid fill batteries, is that if you want to go 48 volts when you utilize all of the 36 volt battery capability, you just put 8 volt batteries in here, and that will get the controller to recognize that it sees 48 volts instead of 36, so it changes some of the settings on its own, and you just buy a 48 volt charger to go there, which we also sell, and we'll link all this in the description. That way you guys can check out everything that is very available to do 36 or 48 volts. Alright guys, so after we get our B positive coil wire here, one there you see with the white tag on it, once you get that into position, you just follow everything else. B plus goes from your solenoid. B positive on the controller goes from the solenoid to the controller, then from the controller to the motor. Okay, and then you're going to come in here with your M minus, go straight from the controller to the motor, looking at its respective place on the diagram, because you will receive a diagram with all of this product. Alright, and then you're going to do your B minus from the battery to the controller. Then of course you'll have your small wiring harness, your small B minus from the wiring harness. Okay, those two go together on the B minus. Then of course you got your F1 and your F2. Those go to your motor. Okay, all right, and then at that point you will be pretty much done and set up with everything that you've got going on. Then you'll just go back and tighten up all your connections everywhere that you know you had to, making sure that your solenoid nuts are good and snug, making sure all your bolts on the controller is good, checking all your zip ties. This is where you start just cutting your zip tie tails off, making sure you get your wiring harness in a good bundle here and zipping it together. Okay, and then you hook up your batteries, and you're going to hit your tow run switch. You should see your LED light up right here. Well, when you cut your tow run switch on, it's going to flash green. Then you'll cut your key switch on. You should come back to see a solid green LED there. If you do not, it will flash an amber LED also, which will be telling you what is going on and how you can address and fix the amber flashing problem. Other than that, it should be ready to go just as soon as you hook this up. Really, the only way you get an amber light out of this is if you just hook something up wrong. So just be mindful of what you're doing, guys, and take your time. Most of all, take your time. That's a wrap, guys, and hopefully this video will get out there to some of y'all that are having some questions or troubles with what's going on here, and some of you may be ready to just jump out of the old crap because it's starting to give you a headache on the forward and reverse. If you're like most of our customers, they burn them up at least once a year. This alleviates that, thankfully. So it's a big upgrade for these older model golf carts. Like I said, this is a 98, and now it is 2024 electronics all day long. Very great setup. We sell a lot of these to you guys out there. And as always, thank you for watching our videos. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, guys. Until next time, God bless you all.